I exposed my little brother live on television. Why? Because he lied about me and basically said I was worthless. Ever since my brother and I were kids, we dreamed of becoming actors. By kids, I mean when he was a kid, I was way older. My little brother was born a whole 13 years after me, so I was more like his dad than his brother. Our mom and dad died in an accident when I was 18 and he was 5. So I literally raised him and went through hell with him. I didn't go to college, of course, and had to keep working. I took him to school, studied for him, and took him to the doctor when he was sick. Helped him when he was going through stuff, and was literally there for him every step for his entire life. The only thing I hoped was that one day he would repay the favor. Because we lived alone for so long, we had to bond. And for us, that was movies. Almost every day, we would put on a movie to watch, and it drove us closer. Maybe I just needed the escapism factor of it all, but I really did enjoy these simple moments between us. Our favorite movie was It's a Wonderful Life. Every year, we would sit down and watch it. I always resonated with the movie just because, like George Bailey, I felt like I did not get what I really wanted in life, but that I had bigger responsibilities that drove me away from those goals. I often imagine just like the ending where George thinks he died, and the whole town is for the worse without him. I imagine that my little brother may not have a good life if I wasn't there, and that made things much better. Then I had enough money to put my brother through college. Even though it was something I never had the luxury of doing, it was hard having him away, but I understood that this was the best case. He decided to lean heavily into drama and become the actor that both of us had always dreamed of becoming. I supported him wholeheartedly and wanted to see him reach the highest of highest places. I also realized that now I had 4 whole years to myself, and that I could start focusing on myself and getting to do what I loved. I felt like my role towards my brother was finally over. For 4 years, we're much, much different though. I had the house to myself, but I felt so lonely. It took me a while to get used to the idea of my brother not being around. And everyone told me that I needed to find my own life, and maybe get married and have children. I found that so difficult, as I completely ignored the aspect of my life for so long. Every time I thought I might try something, it would just pull away. On holidays, my brother would come visit me, but he seemed different. For some reasons, he lived in the college life just a bit too much, and he was changing. Each time he would visit, I would recognize him less and less. It seemed like he would forget some key memories every time I would remind him. We didn't have much family left, so it would always just be me and him on holidays, but they felt more distant and distant. During his 4th year, he told me that he landed this theater gig doing Shakespeare. I was happy for him, and saw that he was finally on the right path. The play was in a different city, so I had to drive a good 4 hours to go see it. I kept calling him when I arrived, but he wouldn't pick up. I assumed that he was just busy in rehearsals, so I got my ticket and took my seat. The play was absolutely wonderful, and he played an amazing Macbeth. I was so excited to see him up on stage, and even more excited when he grabbed the mic to send some thanks at the end. I was waiting for him to thank me or acknowledge anything about me, but he kept thanking his castmates, director, school, and that was it. I was a bit disappointed, but I thought that maybe he just got caught up in the moment and forgot. After the play, I met him backstage and told him how much I loved it. I was excited to spend some time with him to discuss, but he was in such a hurry and told me that he had to go out with his friends. He was being even more distant, and barely let me get a whole sentence in or even a hug. I thought that it was just his age, and because I never went to college, I didn't know that maybe that was just the way the students are when they get their freedom and independence for the first time. That night, I drove home alone, even though we were supposed to meet for breakfast. I thought he wouldn't even notice, and I was right. The next day, I did not get a call for breakfast or anything. I knew his priorities have shifted, so I got the hint and decided to take my own distance. After finishing school, I thought he would finally come home. But he didn't. He called me and told me that he would be staying in LA, as he had found an agent and would start getting some roles. Even though the entire year he barely even called me, I was still happy for him and told him I would visit several times throughout the year. This meant, though, that I was finally on my own and could pursue anything I wanted. I didn't even know what to do, but I felt like my brother would really be involved anymore, so for a year, I saw my brother in various commercials on TV. I was happy every single time, but I wasn't happy when he did not return my calls, which was very often. I would tell people I know that that's my brother, and they'd ask why we weren't meeting. The thing is, my brother seemed to be completely overtaken by life. In the times where he did answer, he would hang up quickly because he was busy and just told me to rain check. It was bad until Thanksgiving, when it was really, really bad. I expected to come like every year, but he did not show up. Didn't even answer my call. I left him a million messages and he replied 2 days later, telling me that he got held up because he had something to shoot. At that moment, I decided it wasn't worth calling him anymore. A few months after that, I saw an ad for a big TV show about some fantasy genre. My brother was going to be in that show, and I couldn't believe it. It was his huge break. This was the moment he really hit a big. Still, a part of me did not even want to congratulate him, and I didn't. I couldn't believe that he would not at least text me with the news. I felt like my life was just at a standstill, so I decided to change things up. I met a girl, and soon enough, we got married, even though I was almost 40. I was finally happy and settled. My wife would often ask about my brother, but I'd be coy about it and tell her that we're not that close. She did not even know he was a famous actor. The show finally premiered and it was a massive hit. I saw my brother's face in every YouTube ad, on every billboard, and honestly, it was like the talk of the century. I saw him doing several interviews to promote the show, but most of them were about the show itself and less about his personal life. This was until the one moment that really, really broke my heart. I sat down one evening to watch The Tonight Show with my wife, and I saw my brother as the first guest. I still couldn't believe how far he's come, but my wife still had no idea standing there on the TV was my brother. I can't blame her, since he did not even bother to show up for my wedding when I sent him the invitation. The show was going well enough until the host finally asked him about his personal life, his upbringing, and how he got to where he was. I was on the edge of my seat and expected to finally get some credit since he can't tell his life story without mentioning me. Of course, I was dead wrong. My brother told everyone how he grew up poor and miserable without a mother or a father, how he struggled in every aspect of his childhood and teenage years, how he felt lonely without parents and wanted someone to talk to, and my jaw was on the floor. He didn't even mention me once, except quickly saying that he had an older brother who lived with him. When the host asked about the brother, which is me, he brushed it off and said that we weren't really close, and more like roommates. The host went on about what he could not believe that he had a brother and still felt this lonely and miserable, and my brother did not do a single thing to defend me or tell the truth. I was furious, and my wife saw me getting angrier and angrier and asked me what was wrong. I told her this was my brother, and she was genuinely shocked. At the end of the interview, he said that he's glad the dark days are behind him, and that his fans are his, quote, real family. I was just so confused, but at the moment, I knew where my brother stood and what he really thought about me. I called him 23 times. Yeah, 23 times that night, and he did not pick up. So I knew I had to take matters into my own hands. I was too furious, and I needed answers. I knew he was staying in a nearby city, so I left my wife at home and drove 6 hours to get where he was, and to his hotel. I told the receptionist that he was my brother and I needed to see him, but of course she didn't believe me. I kept demanding and causing a scene until I coincidentally saw him leaving the elevator. I ran up to him. His personal security grabbed me instantly and asked me what I wanted. I yelled and asked him how he can do this and say this, and he told me that he told the truth. He told me that he saw that I was jealous of him, since both of us had the actor dream when we were young. He told me that as a child, all he cared about was money, and he hated how he lived so modestly. I asked him how can he ignore all the good things I did for him, and he told me that I just did my responsibility as anyone in my position should, and that I did nothing special for him. I was getting more and more furious toward the end, and his security guard had to throw me outside. The brother I knew was gone. This was someone else entirely, and I had to show him his place and give him a lesson he would never forget. I knew that the lives of these Hollywood stars are made hell by paparazzi, so I hired one, told him where my brother lived, and I watched the internet blow up. The paparazzi followed him everywhere, taking extremely unflattering photos of him right outside his house and even through the window. It wasn't enough, though, so I simply leaked his address online. It got so bad and he was swarmed by both paparazzi and fans every day that he had to move to a new place and I didn't know where. Next, I had another trick up my sleeve. I contacted TMZ with some quote inside source reports that my brother texted underage girls. Obviously, this wasn't true, but the internet ate it up without any reputable source. Soon enough, people started posting these fake conversations with him online, claiming that he had tried to talk to them when they were just 16 years old. It was crazy how much the internet wanted to believe anything, and how people went along with any story without any proof. This caused headlines for a whole week, and it must have been a PR nightmare. Him and his team kept denying these allegations, but once you get quote-unquote canceled on the internet, even if you did nothing, you can't really go back. One interesting thing that I heard about that was my brother suddenly invested a large sum of money into this washed-up Italian restaurant in our town. Now, this restaurant was extremely unpopular, and had only one theory of why he'd be pouring so much money into something that was impossible to get money back. I called up an accountant friend of mine, and he started investigating this. By the end of his research, he told me that the only reason someone would invest so much money in some beat-down restaurant was for money laundering. I didn't want to believe it, but I remembered that this wasn't my brother anymore. So we filed about a report, and the restaurant soon enough, auditing, and the police started investigating. This was right in the middle of my brother's fake scandal, so as soon as the police confirmed that there was illegal money laundered, it got shut down and started investigating who the people behind the money were. Right as my friend got back to me with this info, I called my brother and he surprisingly picked up. He asked me what I wanted, and I told him that I knew he was in a lot of trouble and that he can come stay over where he can get away from all this craziness. He took it as a surprise and told me that he would be coming over. He fell right into my trap. A couple days later, he arrived at my house. We sat down for dinner and I asked him all about what's happening. He did not even apologize for the things he said about me, and just sat down frantically. I kept telling him that what he did was wrong, but that he should tell me the whole story. Eventually, he cracked and told me everything. He told me that the Hollywood life had taken over him. He couldn't resist all the pleasures. He told me that he got deep into drugs and sex trafficking, which many rich and famous celebrities were doing apparently. I wasn't surprised about the drugs, but the sex trafficking caught me off guard. He told me he owed people a lot of money, and they had to launder all the money he made, so he invested in that restaurant because he thought nobody would ever recognize it. Since we used to go there when we were kids, he couldn't believe that the restaurant was caught and kept wondering who did it. He told me about so much dirty business he got into, and I kept pretending I was being sympathetic. But he did not feel sorry for any of it. He just talked about it out loud, venting, without showing an ounce of guilt. Once he was over, I cracked a smile that he was confused about. All of a sudden, a bunch of cameramen and reporters burst out of the rooms. It was on live TV. They've recorded everything. I called them earlier, hoping that my brother would be willing to share. We had 3 cameras in the house, and he started throwing a fit. His breakdown and confession to crimes was broadcast to millions live, and I couldn't be happier. He tried to run, but I grabbed him and locked him in the basement until the police arrived. One of the reporters interviewed me. I told them the whole story. I told them how he lied in that one Tonight Show interview, and that I've done everything for him, only for him to completely neglect all that for fame, fortune, and a sob story for the audience. I told the world that my brother was an ungrateful liar. And a couple days later, after he's already been taken into custody for the crimes he confessed to, I started getting an insane amount of calls and emails asking me to do interviews, telling me stories, and even writing a book about the whole thing. In a twisted way, I had become more famous than him for being the brother who took revenge on his own brother, and we became the talk of the month. A part of me felt sad for my brother, but he needed to go through all this to learn gratitude and respect. He got a reduced sentence, likely because of his connections, but he'll still get some prison time. I decided not to visit him once, so when he gets out, he feels this sense of being neglected and forgotten. Okay guys, let's talk about this crazy story just for a quick second. That was an absolute roller coaster, but I'm gonna have to question if this story's real or not. I mean, I was buying it the whole time until the end when the reporters and police just bust out with the cameras. I was like, okay, this kinda sounds like a TV script. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think this story was real or fake? Our next story we're going to look at on the day is titled, Am I the a-hole for asking my parents why my wedding gift was significantly smaller than my sister's? If you're new to the channel, check us out. We read stories every single day, so press that subscribe button. Here comes story number 2. My husband and I, 28 male, 28 female, got married recently, and my sister, who's 31, and I were discussing the wedding after returning from the honeymoon. We're very fortunate to have grown up in a household where my parents made very good money. They were generous with us, but raised my sister and I to be hardworking and not dependent on them as adults. My sister and I both do well financially, as does her husband. My husband loves his job, but it is not one that has a ton of earning potential. He and I met in college, so I've always known this was his plans, and we're very happy with our setup. During my discussion with my sister, she asked me if my husband and I were planning to use the wedding gift money from my parents to do a particular renovation, for which we've been saving, but I was very confused because the gift, while yes, extremely generous and appreciated, wasn't nearly enough to cover that. She told me how much she's been gifted, and it was more than twice what we've been given. After that, I could not stop thinking about why I got less. So my sister encouraged me to ask, and during a call with my mom, I couldn't stop myself from asking her. Her response was that it wasn't my business, but since I did ask, my sister has chosen a partner that can accommodate the lifestyle she's used to, so they've gifted her accordingly. They also gifted me according to the lifestyle I've chosen. We're not entitled to gifts of any size in life, but I still can't help feeling hurt that my parents feel that my husband and I are less deserving than my sister and her husband based on income. Meanwhile, my parents are angry at both my sister and me for having this discussion and bringing it to them. Okay, so this one, the overwhelming majority of the comments said not the a-hole, and almost all of them liked this one specific comment. Not the a-hole. There's a lot of reasons that would have made sense and been okay, including a simple quote, "We're not in the same financial situation we were in when we gave your sister her wedding gift." But to make it about how much you guys make is basically a passive-aggressive way of saying, quote, "You got less because you picked a partner who we feel is beneath you." Guys, that is a wild story, and I can't wrap my head around how someone could be so evil to just straight up say it. Okay, our final story on the day. Another Am I the A-hole? Am I the a-hole for calling the police on my niece who stole my car? Let's check it out. I'm 46 and live on a farm with my husband and 2 kids. My brother Dwayne has a daughter. We'll call her Emma. My brother and his wife have always been very quick to compliment me on the behavior of my children. Angela, my sister-in-law, confides in me about Emma's troubles. Emma is very reckless, shoplifts, drinks, has an older boyfriend, and gets into fights at school. She also constantly is suspended and in and out of school. Over this summer, Emma had a run-in with the law, and they were told that if she did not straighten up her act, she would end up in prison. They suggested and tried therapy, but Emma never wanted to participate. Dwayne asked me if I would take Emma and teach her some responsibility. The arrangement was that I would take Emma for the final month of the summer, enroll her in school here, and keep her for the first semester. If all went well, Emma was welcome to stay with us. Otherwise, other options would be explored. Emma did not do well all through July. Her boyfriend drove over to visit her. To my dismay, I tried to make him leave, but it caused some backlash, so I figured I would set visitation, then wean her time from him more and more. Then I caught her smoking one of those electronic cigarettes. Twice. She would never do any of the work asked and would talk back, steal food, break things, and would be rude to my children. All of that could be dealt with. I knew that once school came around and she needed more discipline. So one morning, we got up into an argument because I told her I was chaining up the fridge and that she better act right or else she'll be forced to scavenge for her food around the farm and cook it herself. If she doesn't want to contribute, she gets nothing the household's worked for. She was livid, throwing stuff, stomping her feet, and making rude gestures. My son and I left to go tend to the animal morning duties and told her that she better catch up to get some chicken tonight or start preparing to pick some vegetables for herself. After an hour of work, I sent my son back home to get me a change of pants due to a fall. He came back asking me if Dad had taken my car. We quickly realized Emma has stolen my car. Not only that, but she did not have a license, only a permit. I did what any reasonable person would do in this situation and called the police. They found her 2 hours later and arrested her, saying she was to be charged with a misdemeanor for driving without a license and I believe joyriding. My brother and his wife are furious with me. They told me, quote, "She steals our car all the time and always brings it back." Which, that would have been good information for me to know beforehand. My family siding with them that calling the police when knowing she would be arrested was an a-hole move. Just to tack this on, I don't have to reiterate this to everyone who comments about the fridge bit. That was more or less an empty threat. If it came to it though, I can't say I would have totally ruled that out of crossing the line. Okay, so my opinion on this last story, not the a-hole, but I have to read this comment. Not the a-hole. Quote, "She steals our cars all the time and always brings them back." Well, now we know where she learned all this from. If they expected you, her aunt, to just brush off for stealing your car, imagine what they let her get away with. I could not have put it in better words myself. Imagine what she got away with. Okay guys, that's all the stories for today, but remember, the best way to support the channel is so simple. Press the subscribe button and press that like button, and if you want to, drop a comment. Even tell me how your day's going. I love to hear it. Okay, have a wonderful night, and Mr. Reddito will catch you tomorrow.